Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions, this is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Let's Just Talk and Kathryn Raaker's World. Our guest today is Lynne Renoir, and she was raised in an ultra-conservative Christian home, but despite 50 years of giving everything she had to her faith, she failed to experience anything like the transformation that is promised to believers. A problem she faced was how to explain the transformation that seemed to be occurring in the lives of others, including those who held different beliefs and those who had held none. She has written 2 other books, but this is her newest book, The Abuse of Men. And I want to welcome you to our show today. How are you, Lynne?
I'm fine, thanks, Kathryn.
And can I ask which part of Australia that you live in?
I'm just north of Sydney.
Just north of Sydney. Awesome. One of these days, I will come to Australia. My husband's been there many, many times. He used to cover it for his company. Can I ask you why, and after reading some of your bio, that you were from an ultra-conservative Christian faith, and you were abused by your father. Am I correct?
Yes, that's right.
So you eventually actually had a master's degree. You got a master's degree and you did your master's thesis on abuse of men. Why?
Well, we had to write something that was relevant to our lives. And at first, I thought of writing on the abuse of women by men, but I found that there was so much literature in that field that I then decided to research the abuse of men by women, because very little had been done in that area.
Well, were you surprised at how many men had been abused?
Oh, yes, I was horrified.
And it's amazing because in my lifetime, I've met 2 or 3 men that have been abused they look very strong. They seem to have a certain situation about them, but these women that abuse them, why do they do it?
Well, my own theory is that there is something psychologically dysfunctional about women who abuse men. They probably had a background of abuse in their own family.
And was it very difficult for these men to tell you their stories?
Yes, it was difficult to even find the men, but once they were willing to speak to me, then they were able to open up to me.
So they were open to you, and their names are not the names of them. Is that correct? You did a fictionalized name of each person, or did you use their first name?
No, I used a fictional name for each person.
Right. Because they would have never forgiven you, right? True. So anyhow, how long did it take you to write The Abuse of Men?
Oh, about a year.
A half a year? Is that what you said?
A whole year.
A whole year. And it took that long. How many, there's 102 or 108 pages in it, right? And it has interviews with men. It talks about a lot of different things in the book. And what did you get on your thesis?
I got a high distinction.
You had got what?
Or did you say what grade did I get?
Yes, what did you get when you, I mean, this is a thesis, right? And did you get a lot of praise for it?
Oh, yes. They awarded me a high distinction.
Right. And so how many years ago did you get your master's thesis?
Oh, this was several years ago.
Several years ago. Okay. You love writing, don't you?
Yes, I do.
And it's funny because I have two books coming. I've already got one book out, but I've got the second book that I co-authored with my son, and who was a journalist and was sweet enough to help me get the second one written. How about that? And it comes out in March. So I'm definitely going to read your whole book because I really wanted to, really see all of the parts of it. There's two other books you've written too. God Interrogated, Reinterpreting the Divine, right?
Yes.
And the other book that you have, hold on, is Leaving Faith, Finding Meaning, right?
Yes.
Let me ask you this question. Your father was, extremely conservative Christian. Was he a minister?
A lay preacher.
A lay preacher. And were there any other children in your family besides you?
Yes, there were 3 younger sisters.
3. Did he treat them the same way?
Well, they were clever enough to avoid punishment. They were not like me. They were just quiet and gentle and submissive, the way the New Testament says a female should be.
Right. Do most Australian men tend to overlord women, would you say?
Oh, look, it's hard to say, Kathryn. I really don't know.
Well, a lot of the women that I know that are from Australia have told me they're usually that way, but I can't imagine everybody in Australia is that way. So, I think with a lot of very super Christian evangelists, sometimes they go beyond, and especially if you give them a hard time about it. If you question, did you question a lot?
Not the beatings, no, because my father said he was God's representative in the family. So it was his responsibility to carry out the words of Solomon in the Old Testament, who allegedly said that a parent must not spare the rod. So my father took that literally. He went out into the bush one day and broke off a branch, and he made a cane, and he beat me with that cane until I left home.
Wow. What did your mother do?
Oh, my mother was too terrified to do anything.
She wouldn't do anything because she was probably afraid of your father, right?
Oh, she was. And she was a devout Christian herself. And she believed the New Testament idea that a woman must be submissive to her husband. So my mother was totally submissive to my father in everything.
The question I have is, did it make you not want to get married?
Oh, well, I wasn't married until I was 36, so I was very hesitant.
Right. And so was it a pleasant marriage, or was it a happy marriage?
Yes, it was a good marriage, yes.
And so when you left at 23, right?
That's right, yes.
And did you start working, or what did you do?
Well, I went to New Zealand. I had been trained in secretarial work. So that's what I did for a year in New Zealand.
Okay. And you love New Zealand?
Oh, I adore it. Yes, it's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that from my husband. I can't wait to go. There's the 2 places that I haven't been that I absolutely have to go. And after living overseas, you want to see as much as you can, right? So tell me, when you first started writing the book and you started interview, how did you get them to tell their stories?
Well, I had to advertise through a men's magazine that was held in the State Library of New South Wales. So from that advertisement, various men wrote back and said they'd like to be interviewed.
Right. And so you had 48. Did you have more than that to interview?
No, that was the exact number that I interviewed. Some of the interviews were conducted face to face, and the ones in New Zealand, obviously I had to do that over the phone.
Right. So, and that's why it probably took you a year. Was it hard to publish? Did you self-publish or did you find a publisher?
No, because it was a thesis submitted to the university held the original copy.
Right. So when you went to, so you just recently published it, is that the truth? Is that the situation?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so they don't own it.
No, as far
You
as
own
I
it.
yes, I
Sometimes universities want to keep everything, you know. So anyhow, but so when did you, has it been recently that you started writing it?
And you're talking about the abuse of men?
Yes.
Oh no, the abuse of men was my thesis
Right.
that I wrote several years ago, and it's now just been republished.
Just now been republished. So it must have taken a lot of courage to do that. Am I right?
Now, are you talking about republishing the abuse of men?
Yes.
Well, I felt it was the right thing to do. I felt that people needed to know how bad the situation was with men, particularly with the Me Too movement, and all the emphasis is on the abuse of women by men, and abused men have simply been overlooked.
Mm-hmm. On that note, I'm going to take a short break. We have to have our commercials, right? So can you give where people can purchase your book? And actually you have a blog and you have all kinds of things. So would you mind giving that information out, please?
Yes, it's LynneRenoir.com. That is my web address. It's LYNNERENOIR, LynneRenoir.com.
Is your husband French?
No, my husband died a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
No, he's not.
No. So you took the pen name Renoir?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's what I just wanted to know. You know, sometimes people see, my name is Kathryn Raaker. I use my real name, but because I like the way it's spelled and the way it sounds, you know, for everything I do. Okay. But that's amazing. So do you have children today?
No, we didn't have any children.
Didn't have any kids. Okay. So writing is your passion now. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to take that short break and we'll be right back with the author of The Abuse of Men. And that is Lynne Renoir. And she will be right back along with me. We are back on Kathryn Raaker's World and Kathryn Raaker's Let's Just Talk with a wonderful, great author named Lynne Renoir. And she's written 3 books, or maybe even 4. The Abuse of Men. And you want to tell the other titles, Lynne?
Well, there's The Abuse of Men that was my thesis.
Right.
Then I completed a PhD in philosophy. And after I had completed my doctorate, I wrote the book, God Interrogated, Reinterpreting the Divine. Then recently I have written my memoir, which is Leaving Faith, Finding Meaning, a preacher's daughter's search for God.
Right. So this really kind of turned you off to religion?
Well, I developed a different concept of what ultimate reality is. I don't believe that there is a personal God who created the world and who sits in judgment on us. But I believe that the whole of reality is one. And from what we might call the source, everything emanates. And each of us is an integral part of that oneness. And I believe that our function in life is to try to connect with that oneness Now, for some people, the process of connecting with that oneness
Mhm.
will be via the idea that there is a personal God. Now, if that is going to work for them, well, then their lives will be transformed. But
Mhm.
I spent 50 years believing there was a personal God, and nothing happened to transform my life.
Right. And I think there are a lot of people that if they grow up seriously, if they grow up with ultra conservative religion that doesn't seem like religion to me or God to me, they tend to leave the faith. And there were times when I questioned my faith after what I went through, but I came back to my faith. But that was my personal decision. And I think everyone has that personal feeling within themselves, you know, and that's that's just my opinion though. But it took you, so you're still writing, correct?
Well, I'm not writing a new book, but I am responding to the messages that are being sent to me, people who want to understand what I mean by a certain concept.
Right. Well, and that makes sense. That's the reason why you have your blog, right?
Yes.
Right. And do you get a lot of correspondence with your blog?
Well, it's just starting to build up now. My agent has only just begun her publicity work, so I'm expecting that I'll get a lot greater response in the next few weeks, the next few months.
Now, today you live in Australia or New Zealand?
Australia.
Australia. Can you do book signings and stuff like that right now?
No, I'm not in a position to do that at the moment.
You don't want to do that? Is that what you said?
Well, I'd actually prefer not to.
Love that. I have clients like you that, especially one of my clients you love, he's 82 and a widower. And when I first started handling him as a PR person, I don't want to go anywhere. I went, what? And today he does what I tell him to do because he believes me. Okay. He was kind of shy about doing it. And he's a great author. And so, I think everybody is different, right? And you seem like you're a little shy, right? Would you say you're shy?
Well, I'm an introvert, put it that way.
You're an introvert.
Yes.
You don't seem like it to me. So anyhow, so it's been very interesting for you. How are your sales on your books doing, Lynne?
Well, they're just starting because, as I said, the publicity work has only just begun.
And you're gonna do really well. Anyhow, do you see any of your books becoming a series of some sort?
Well, no one has suggested that yet, but I'd certainly be open to it.
Right. I mean, is that your goal? Is that your thought?
Well, I hadn't really thought of a series. I'm just hoping that the books will sell.
Right. So when did you decide that you were going to get that publicity and do something about it?
Oh, this was a couple of years ago.
Okay, that's great.
I've got to get these ideas to the public before I die. Now, I'm 82, and the average woman in Australia dies at 85. So I've only got 3 years left.
You only have 3 years left? That's what you said?
Well, I'm 82 now.
Hey, sweetie, listen, you are young 82. I'd love to have you back on again. You're the cutest little button in the world. And I mean that. Yeah. So I like to have fun on our shows. And I like to meet authors that really care about people. And I see that in just the little that I've read, Lynne. And I love your name. Where did you decide to create the name Renoir?
It just came to me in a vision.
Okay. Mine came to me because, actually Elizabeth is my confirmation name. And Bromwell I came up with. And we're the first book, the cover is Ascot. She's got this gorgeous hat and she's in front of Ascot. And my son said to me when we were doing the second book, "You're not going to put your picture on the second book, are you?" And I went, "No." I said, "We'll figure out the cover." And I have a very talented printer who's a graphic designer that came up with the cover, and it's gorgeous. And I love your cover. I really, really love your cover. It's beautiful and it's soft in appearance. So do you ever think that you would ever do another study on the men that you interviewed originally?
Well, I don't have contact with them anymore. That was the understanding, that the whole thing would be anonymous.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, it's so hard for them to admit, especially if they're a manly man, right? Or whatever you want to call it. And people don't understand that can happen very easily. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, definitely. Yes.
Was there one person within the thesis that shocked you more than not?
The thing that shocked me the most was that women can sexually abuse men. Now, this woman would demand sex at any hour of the day or night. And if the man either couldn't or wouldn't conform to what she wanted, she would abuse him, do all sorts of horrible things to him, say, "What are you, a man or a mouse? You should be able to do it. Now get on with it." So the sexual abuse of men, I was just horrified by it.
Wow. Yeah, I know unfortunately, a lot of women beat their husbands, and that's sad.
Oh, well, there was a lot of that. I mean, I looked at physical abuse, psychological abuse, and sexual abuse. Now, the physical abuse was absolutely horrific, throwing pots of boiling water over the man and stabbing him with a knife. The psychological abuse, some of the men said the psychological abuse was even worse than the physical, because women would say, "Look, I've been having affairs right throughout the marriage. You don't mean anything to me. Your whole family are a pack of losers," and dreadful, denigrating things. And, some men felt completely worthless after the woman had made these scurrilous attacks on their character and on their personality.
Right. What would you say to someone today that reads your book, that actually picks up your books and sees themselves in it? What would you say for them to do?
Are you talking about a man reading it or a woman reading it?
I'm talking about a man that's been abused or being abused. What would you tell them today? If you were giving them advice, what would you say?
I would suggest that they seek professional help. Now, a lot of professional people are now coming to realize that it's not only women who are being abused, but it's men. See, years ago, people would not even countenance the idea that a man could be abused. But now the light is gradually dawning that abuse is not gender specific. So there are a lot of psychologists and even psychiatrists who are recognizing the plight of abused men. Mm-hmm. So I would say to an abused man, go and seek professional help.
Mm-hmm. So anyhow, thank you. And what time is it there?
It is now 11:30 in the morning here.
Oh, 11 in the morning. Well, it's now going on 8 o'clock at night. So anyhow, I used to live in Singapore, Lynn. And so I used to have to travel And I didn't know what time it was in the end, So anyhow, thank you again. You're such a sweetheart. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.